Hiya, John Hand with the Pulsing Cinema, and today's movie is a number 2, is Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2, to be quite exact. Texas Chainsaw is now one word. Remember, in the original Chainsaw Massacre, it was chain space saw. The Texas Chain Space Saw Massacre. That's something that, as a kid, I didn't, again, I'm being a stickler for details, but it became Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2. As a kid, I was kind of obsessed with number 2s. You know, I was like obsessed with Chainsaw Massacre Part 2, and then Night of the Living Dead, Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2. And then Return of the Living Dead, which you think about it is kind of somehow a predecessor to, I guess you have Dawn of the Dead, but so scratch that. I was being an idiot. I was trying to create the narrative of me being obsessed with second movies. Just forget about that. But I don't know. Chainsaw 2 had the better poster art. And Nightmare 2 had the better poster art. And as a kid, I at least thought about it that way. And the thing is, the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I tried to watch as a kid, but I would get to the point, I rented it like a couple times, and it had that narration by John Larroquette at the beginning. It was so creepy. It was so damn creepy that I could not finish it. I got scared. I turned it off. Texas Chainsaw 2 was less creepy. It was more of a stylized kind of hyper comedic kind of Fellini-esque excursion into strange horror. There's one of the hallmarks of Tobe Hooper's work is there are moments of just hysteria and insanity where he will just get things up to the point where they will just reach this emotional just kind of crescendo where everything will just go nuts and insane. That happens in Chainsaw 1. That happens in Death Trap, Eaten Alive. Happens in a lot of his films. And it even happens, you think about at the end of Salem's Lot, where things get kind of nuts in a very lesser way in Salem's Lot, and it happens just in this film. They're just exploding with humor, and it's a Tobe Hooper film, and it's a Chainsaw film. It's a continuation of the original film and the original values of the original film, shot in the same town as the original film. It's an Austin film, even though I think it's set in Dallas. And it's basically, the original Chainsaw was like the war on the hippies. It was like the good old boys wage war on the hippies. And Chainsaw 2 is the good old boys wage war on the yuppies. It was originally going to be really spelled out, in the beginning. It was going to be like these scenes of people being, of these yuppie icons of these stores, and everything was going to be chainsawed. And, it was, a much crazier film than it eventually turned out to be. And I wonder what the late 70s, early 80s conception of the Chainsaw sequel that apparently Tobe Hooper had worked on with William Friedkin. I don't think that ever came to light, and I don't think this film was part of that. This film is a whole new thing from basically Tobe Hooper working with Cannon Films, and Cannon Films going like, well, we want a Chainsaw movie, and then this guy doing it. I mean, it's a different Leatherface. It's more of a bumbling comedic Leatherface, but it's still, people are getting their faces sawed off and their heads sawed in two. It's a gory film. It's much more explicit and gorier than the original film. But I think the original Chainsaw Massacre was so iconic, it had grown inside people's heads to an extent that it had almost grown outside of itself. and people had a vision for what a chainsaw film was, that had been created not so much by the original film itself, but by what people thought of the original film. The merchandising, the vision of Leatherface, of this crazy guy with a mask and a sledgehammer. This vision of the original film overshadowed the original film itself. And so when people came to Chainsaw 2, I mean, it was a good film. It was a film that you could enjoy on your weekend out. It was a fulfilling experience, but it wasn't what people expected. And I think people just kind of reacted kind of adversely to it. In a way, I think the kids loved it. As a kid, as I told you, I was obsessed with it, and I loved it. And I still love it. I don't watch it as much as I watched the original film, because over the years I began to appreciate the film as an experience, as a thing, as a cultural landmark, as a cinematic landmark, as a brilliant, great piece of cinema. And I don't think number 2 is a great piece of cinema, but it is a great further exploration of those characters. It's an exploration of what a great filmmaker can do with those characters. And to me, it's the only film that he could have made in the 80s with those characters, with that atmosphere, with his vision. And so it's to me a great film, a film to check out, a film to enjoy, and still a film that that I love. So there it is, Chainsaw 2.